Said Elmer Rudolph. I'm currently the president of the Sapperton Fish and Game Club, and I've been involved with the Sapperton Fish and Game Club since 1984. So about 26 years now. And the Sapperton Fish and Game Club has been involved with not only Stoney Creek here, but the main stem that Stoney Creek flows into, the Burnett River, since approximately 1969. So it's been a long involvement. When the club wanted to restore the extinct salmon runs that used to be plentiful in the Burnett River, restore them to some semblance that Sapperton Fish and Game Club members had remembered way back from the 50s and the 60s. And so the Sapperton Fish and Game Club took the restoration to salmon to the Burnett River on as a community project. And at the time when we were taking it on, nobody was doing this. This was in the late 1960s, and the words environment and ecology and things like that were not part of the language. So when we said we wanted to do this, people looked at us like we were crazy and, what are you talking about? You know, you can't do that. The river's an open sewer. The fish are long gone. It's polluted. You know, you can't do anything. Anyway, we were determined, and those original club members said, nope, well, we're going to do what we can. And so they began. And after a few years, in the 1970s, we began to get a lot of press attention. What are we doing here? Who's helping you? Well, nobody's helping us. And the press began to get on the various government agencies and that kind of thing to say, why aren't you helping these people? And eventually in the late 70s, the federal government came on board with a salmonid enhancement program, and the other agencies began to come on board. We began to put pressure on the polluters on the Burnett River, clean things up. By 1984, we had our first salmon return in over 30 years to the Burnett River, coho salmon. And where we are here today, Stoney Creek. Stoney Creek is important because it's the single best spawning and rearing tributary in the Burnett River watershed. And so it was important that the fish that are coming back, now that we'd established in the late 70s that everybody's on our side, and one of these days we're going to get fish coming back here. So the idea was we needed to make the entire length of Stoney Creek here available for spawning and rearing. And the part that we see here below this fishway by the current Santa Fe, Burlington Northern and Santa Fe railway track is only a small portion that you can see that goes down to the Burnett River. The larger portion of this stream is above those railway tracks. So in the late 1970s, you can see there's one culvert straight through here, and there's another one beside it. Those were what they call perks. The outlets from them were about 6 feet above the stream, and the water came down, so there was no way that fish could get up there. So we decided, well, if fish are going to start coming back to our watershed pretty soon, we need to get a fishway. So we got a grant. We got a government grant of $35,000 or something. And the Sapperton Fish and Game Club hand mixed the concrete and whatnot right beside the railway tracks, brought it down and actually built a simple 2 or 3 stage concrete box fishway that allowed the fish to ascend from the creek level up 1 or 2 boxes and eventually jump into that culvert and pass through. So, and it worked very well in the mid 80s when the fish started coming back. We recorded coho, cutthroat trout, steelhead going up through there, and that everything was going fine. But unfortunately, the culvert that you see there was not maintained very well. It began to rust out in the bottom. And the water, rather than flowing through the culvert, was coming down the culvert and sinking under the culvert and flowing under the culvert, and it began to undermine the fishway. And in 1990, we had a very bad winter of heavy rains, a lot of water coming through. Heavy water coming through under the culvert now, eroded all the ground around the fishway, and the concrete fishway collapsed. So there was no way for the fish to get out. Well, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans said to the railway, you are responsible for maintaining those culverts properly so that this wouldn't happen, and because you didn't, you are now responsible for building a fishway. Well, the railway, they dragged their feet and they dragged their feet and they dragged their feet, but the Department of Fisheries and Oceans kept on them, and they had federal fisheries law on their side, and the railways operating in Canada, so they had to live by that. So they finally said, "Oh, okay, we'll build it." So along about 1995, it took about 5 years of negotiating. For 5 years, there were no fish being able to get up there. They decided we're going to build it. So, and to their credit, when they did build it, it's kind of hard to see from here, and maybe we'll see some better shots later on in more detail. When they did build it, we were very pleased with what they built. We called it the Cadillac of fishways. They thought of everything. They spared no money and no expertise. They did an excellent job, and we're really happy with the job they did. We couldn't have done anywhere near a job. They spent a lot of money doing it, and so to their credit, they built a terrific fishway. So as of now, this fishway is working, and it's made up of a series. You can see straight through there. There's the culvert, and you can see the water coming out of the culvert. And then what's hidden by some of the brush, which you can't see, is a step moving to my left. The water goes to the left and then comes down in a series of boxes like this, makes another turn this way, goes underneath where that solid concrete wall is, steps down to another box, and eventually makes it down to the stream. There are about 7 or 8 boxes altogether, where our original fishway had 2. So this has got 7 or 8. And you can also see that there's what appears to be a straight flume coming out from the culvert there, and there's no water flowing on it now, but the purpose of that flume is that when we get heavy water in the winter, the excess water that isn't needed for the fishway, instead of spilling onto the fishway and disturbing the fish that are coming up and maybe hindering the fish to come up, all that excess water shoots straight over the flume and comes and lands down in the creek below. So that's the purpose of that. So that was something, of course, that we hadn't thought about when we built our original fishway, and to their credit, that's something they did think about. So as we said, we were very pleased to see what they had done, and we call it the Cadillac of fishways. We'd never seen a better one. So so there we are. That's the history of that fishway. Now, as I said, the Sapperton Fishing Game Club, when we formed, when we began to do the enhancement on the Burnett River system, and this creek also in about 1970, we were essentially the only fish and game club in this area doing this. In 1990, approximately 1990, a new organization formed called the Stoney Creek Environment Committee, whose sole interest was the rehabilitation and the care of Stoney Creek. Well, the Sapperton Fishing Game Club was very happy to see them come, because that kind of took a load off us, because we were trying to look after everything, and we were spread so thin everywhere that it was hard for us to do everything. So we were really happy to see them take on and concentrate their efforts on the welfare of Stoney Creek. And they've been doing an excellent job ever since. They've been working with community, they've been working with the Simon Fraser University, they've been involved with all kinds of building that's going on, trying to protect the watershed from excess salt and excess minerals and silt and all that sort of thing. They've done an excellent job since 1990, and I have to give them a lot of credit for that. So currently they're looking after the Stoney Creek, but because I've been around quite a long time, I'm giving you a little bit of history and background on this fishway. When we built the original fishway in the late 1970s, the one that got washed out in 1990, those fish were coming up here also. But there were some limitations to the old fishway. But with the new one, where they looked at a lot of varying water conditions in the creek and how to accommodate them with the fishway, which we didn't originally think of in 1978 when we built the original fishway. So this fishway was much more efficient at transporting fish under the railway tracks and further up than the old one was. As a result, we got large numbers of, not only a respectable number of coho coming back up over here, but large numbers of chum salmon. Large numbers of chum salmon coming up here in the I think we had a record year about 4 or 5 years ago, 1,500 chum salmon, which is absolutely astounding for a small creek like this. So we had, and for some students that might not know, chum salmon are not small fish. Chum salmon go 15 pounds, 12, 15 pounds, even bigger. In some rivers they go up to 20. So they're big fish and they take up a lot of room. And 1,500 chum salmon in here is a lot of fish in this smaller creek. And a decent number of coho. We're still struggling with coho, trying to get the coho numbers up. And we're also trying to work to get the numbers of sea-run cutthroat trout up here, because this is historically a good watershed for cutthroat trout, sea-run cutthroat trout. We're trying to increase those. Those numbers are not what they used to be 20, 30 years back, but we're still working with that. And of course steelhead. The steelhead run. Steelhead are in trouble all over the lower mainland, all over BC. They're in trouble, particularly in the lower mainland. And we still have a small steelhead run in the Burnett River, and we're encouraging. Periodically, we see a couple of pairs of steelhead come up into the upper creek there that are monitored, and they're discovered and identified. But those are the target fish. And since that new fishway has come in, those fish have appeared in the upper part there to a much greater degree than they ever were before. So if you want to measure it that way, this fishway has been a big success in doing that. In terms of how the fishway is working itself and the future of the fishway, of course, as I mentioned before, it's poured out of concrete. Now, when we built the first fishway, it was kind of amateurish. We were working with wheelbarrows and sacks filled with wet cement, which we would stack up, and they would hopefully meld into a wall and this kind of thing, Well, of course, when they built this, they had all the machinery and the technology that they needed, so they built all the proper forms. They had a concrete pumper here, and this fishway is going to last a long time. It's built on proper foundations. It's properly engineered. This fishway is going to last a long time. I expect that this fishway will still be here 50 years from now. When I'm long gone, this fishway will still be here and still working. And I think the railway company also, given that their knuckles were wrapped in 1990 because they did not maintain the original fishway properly, I think they'll be monitoring these culverts to make sure they don't rust out again and compromise the integrity of the fishway. So I think they've learned their lesson, and I think they're going to be looking after this and monitoring how well everything works here. And so I expect this fishway to be doing well decades from now, and hopefully producing ever-increasing numbers of fish coming up into Stoney Creek. Maintenance is very important. You might think, oh well, you just build these boxes and the water goes in and the fish come up, which is true. But debris, particularly in the winter when the water is heavy, debris comes down into the fishway, and because the water has to change direction, this way, that way, this way, that way, it's not a straight flow, so sometimes pieces of wood come down, they get stuck and that sort of thing, boulders, that kind of thing. So the Stoney Creek Environment Committee comes down, and particularly in the spawning season and before the spawning season, they go through, they monitor, they check out all the boxes, they get in there with whatever they need, waders and whatnot, and dig out everything, all the debris and everything that's in there, clear it all out, make sure everything's working. And they also keep a watchful eye on it through the spawning season, which will last from late September through till early December, and monitoring not only the numbers of fish that are coming up here, for which they do an excellent job, but also monitoring how well a fishway is working, and if there are any problems, they get in there immediately and take out any debris that might be obstructing the fish from coming up. So that's, you can see, as a matter of fact, if you look at the end of the flume there, you can see hanging down, which looks like some debris there, which probably came down the stream from the last high water. And but because we're in midsummer here, there's no fish movement in the stream now, so they'll be saving their efforts until about mid-September, late September, when they'll come in here and they'll give the fishway a good clean out and start monitoring and make sure that it's working 100%. The Sapperton Fish and Game Club was not involved in plantings so much in this area. Um, our, our original efforts were made to clean up water quality. That was the big problem when we first were looking to try and bring salmon back to the stream, was water quality. That was it. That was it, with an exclamation mark. And once we got into the upper part of the watershed here, riparian vegetation was actually in pretty good shape. And I don't know, you can see here there's a lot of trees around us. You can see there's a lot of overhanging branches, a lot of big branches up there. So there's a lot of good canopy on this stream, what they call canopy. In some places it's virtually 100%, but in a lot of the stream here, for the next 400 meters until it winds its way down to the Burnett River, I'd say the canopy is probably 80 to 90% in a lot of it. And there's a lot of undercut banks with pools, with debris that's filled in there, which provides excellent cover for juveniles, and so and it's got lots of good spawning gravel. So this stream has got everything. It's got canopy, it's got lots of pools, it's got riffles, it's got oxygen, and it's got everything. And this is, of course, why this stream is the single best producer of salmonids that we have in the entire Burnett watershed. The Sapperton Fish and Game Club was originally formed back in the early 1960s, and they started to do their environmental work in about 10 years later, around 1969, 1970. I did not join the Sapperton Fish and Game Club until 1984. I didn't even know they existed, actually. But I used to fish. I used to fish all over the Lower Mainland, fish the Fraser River and up the valley and whatnot, and took home lots of fish for dinner and whatnot. And one day, I don't know, I guess I decided, you know what, it's time I started putting back. I mean, taking fish out of the river, taking fish. Maybe it's time I started putting back. And an acquaintance of mine said, well, you know what, you should get in touch, you should look into the Sapperton Fish and Game Club. They got a project on the other side of town, and they're a really good community group, and they're trying to do things to bring salmon back to the Burnett River. You should get in touch with them. So I went to their very next meeting, and I thought, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. This gives me an opportunity to get involved, to start putting something back. And that was in 1984, and here I am, I'm still at it. So, people say, well, what makes you do it? Well, you know, when it comes right down to it, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to do it. And if we all turned around and said, well, let the next guy do it. I'm too busy. Why don't you do it? And the next guy, oh, I'm too busy. Why don't you do it? And it doesn't get done. Somebody has to do it. And so I don't do it for any personal reward or anything like that. As far as I'm concerned, when I see the fish coming back in increasing numbers, and when we have adult tours, public tours, and when people come back and they see the fish spawning in the river and the kids get a big kick out of it and whatnot, to me that's what it's all about. To the fact that the public can now appreciate that there are fish coming up these streams, and because of that the streams have to be protected, and the public now, they have to do their part to make sure that these fish continue to come up here. And that's kind of my reward